Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate pros. Brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics. In association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it. There we go. Welcome to Let's Chat, an athletic therapy roundtable. This is session 31 with Vicki Bendus as our guest this evening. Appreciate your time for joining us, Vic, and for everybody else who made it on this evening and anybody who's picking it up on the archive sessions. This is going to be a good one. Lots of information, lots of experience, lots of stories to tell. And before we get into that, Vic, I'll just go over the ground rules for everybody again. This session's being recorded for the purposes of holding Vicki accountable. First and foremost. Okay, maybe not first and foremost, but second at least. But yeah. But for the purposes of going back in time and saving the world one conversation at a time, definitely. And for all of us going back to make notes, take notes, and go over the conversation again, as I have no doubt this is going to be quality. So if you have any questions or comments or concerns as we go, please feel free to drop a note into the chat box or just unmute yourself and pipe in at a feasible time. This is meant to be authentic. This is definitely an organic conversation where everybody has access, and that's the goal here, is to grow networks, grow our profession of athletic therapy, and build a little bit more of an integrated model with other practitioners and other human beings across Canada and worldwide. So without further ado, I'll get into Vicki's bio and let her say hello, and then we'll jump right in. So Vicki Bendus is our guest again, session 31 of Let's Chat, an athletic therapy roundtable. Vicki currently serves as a lead sport performance coach with Brock University's men's and women's hockey, as well as men's and women's soccer. She is the strength and conditioning coach with the national women's hockey team and with Wrestling Canada. She also serves as a strength and conditioning coach at Ridley College down there in St. Catharines with both the men's and women's hockey programs. She holds a master's degree and is currently pursuing a PhD, which we'll get into, I'm sure, as we go along here discussing that. And then going back to her days as an athlete, she played for Canada's national team beginning in 2010. She won a IIHF women's championship. I think that's 2012. Is that right, Vic? Yeah, 2012 championship, and then was invited to try out for the 2014 Olympic roster as well. In 2010, she was given or awarded the Patty Kazmaier Award, which is awarded to the top player in women's NCAA hockey. So I kind of condensed that, but that is a whole lot of things that have been accomplished in a short period of time. And Vic, I'll let you say hi, and then we'll jump into sort of your story as an athlete, your story as a strength coach, and everything in between.
Sure. Yeah. James, thanks for having me and asking me to hop on. I think when you put the carrot out there, and maybe it was back in April or May, about the chance to kind of come chat with your team here. I was looking forward to it ever since then. And yeah, I guess when you lay it out in a big paragraph like that, it seems like a lot, but when you're going through it, it doesn't seem like that much. But no, I've been fortunate kind of along the way to get to go through a reasonably long journey as an athlete, and hopefully an equally long journey as a coach. Kind of still feel like I'm starting out now, but yeah, it's been a go so far.
Yeah, it's awesome, and we'll get into all of that. But I think definitely the journey as a coach and sort of a mentor, a colleague to a lot of people moving forward. Your career is just starting, but is already so fruitful. And again, we'll get into that with your time down there at Brock, with Wrestling Canada, with Hockey Canada, with Ridley, just kind of all over the board, and your ability to sort of move wherever you need to and be with the teams that you're with, because it's an interesting combination of sort of ice and field and the division, and then obviously the mat. So we'll get into lots of good stuff with you. Just to give everybody a little bit of context, a little bit of background, Vicki and I kind of ran into each other at random again during my time at York. There was a bit of overlap with Adam Douglas, who was a previous guest on Let's Chat as well. He was a strength and conditioning coach and overseer with women's hockey, and still is, I believe, kind of overseeing all of the programming and all of those things. But at the time Vicki was playing, and she was training with Adam down in the gym, and had a little, I don't know, just something that was kind of nagging her and didn't really have access to the therapy staff. So Adam brought her up to our clinic, and from there it was kind of just an opportunity to work with a really high level athlete who is dedicated and driven. But after a session or two, it wasn't even about the athlete, it was about the human being, and just like the connection that we had in the clinic, and then beyond down into the gym. And then it went from I think just your standard, I don't want to say standard, but like hockey issue, groin issue, to a wrist thing. And I want to talk about those two things specifically with you, maybe just to start, because it's where our relationship kind of started, and some really interesting topics for practitioners to think on. So I don't know if you can go back in time and just go to like that groin injury and what was going on with that, and then more so spend some time with the wrist, because I remember this one specifically being like image driven, and then we moved away from the imaging and really worked on some other things. So
Yeah, for sure. So when kind of that would have been around 2000, kind of between 2012, 13-ish, and then into just past 2014. And during that time, so I played university hockey at Mercyhurst University for 4 years in the States. And then when I came back, I played in the CWHL, which was our kind of women's hockey league post, university at the time. And, with Hockey Canada, we're a decentralized model. So, you're a member of the national team, but, you're only with the team during camps and tournaments. And when you're not with that team, you're at your kind of home training hub, playing with your club team, so I was training at York because Adam was our lead strength and conditioning coach. And I was GTA based. So it made sense for me to go there and train with him kind of on a daily basis. And kind of during that time, I developed a pretty annoying, lingering groin and hip issue. Very not uncommon for hockey players, to be sure, but it was one that kind of made our paths merge together. And with our decentralized model, it's kind of up to us, as athletes to find therapists when we're at our training hubs. At least it was back then. Now it's kind of a little bit more. You have these people that you go to. But Adam was like, well, because we were trying to train around it. I was seeing kind of a couple of private practice clinicians, but it was all kind of piecemealed together. With Adam trying to piece it all together into my program, things like that. And he's like, maybe you should see James. He's great. He works with our athletes. I think it might have been off season at that time, probably the first time Adam brought me up to the clinic. So a little bit of a slower time at the clinic. And that's kind of when I started working with James. And it was really, for an athlete, the optimal type scenario where, I would, get to York and I would, come see James. He would kind of, get me ready for whatever I need to do. So, assess me, check in with me, make sure I was doing all right. We would go down to the gym together. Him and Adam would kind of talk about things, create my plan for the day training wise. I'd go down, I'd train for an hour and a half. And, whenever, and this is something that we tell all our athletes that, even when you're injured, it doesn't mean you stop training, even though it might look a little bit different, still training hard. So I would train for an hour and a half and then, come back up, see James. And then we would do all the kind of post-training therapy, modalities, ice tub, whatever it was for that day. And I think that whole kind of chunk of my day was, at least 3 hours, sometimes longer, probably stretched out because we would be, talking about the Jays and stuff like that. And just when I popped on the call, we started talking about the Jays again. It's like, we can't not.
Yeah.
But, one of the things, and, for anyone who's played a sport and, has been injured knows, it is very difficult mentally when you can't kind of train at full capacity. And when you're a national team athlete, and, for me, I was a bubble player. I was always, fighting tooth and nail for my spot. So knowing that I couldn't feel like I was preparing the way, I needed to prepare to try to cement my spot was very hard mentally. And, getting to have James on my team and know that, he was doing everything in his power, and he was working with Adam, who was doing everything in his power, to put me in the best possible position to get back on the ice and to be healthy, not just, in the short term, but in the long term too, was huge. And I think we spent like pretty much a whole summer like that. That was my day. I would go to York in the morning, hang out with James and Adam for a good couple hours, and then go home, rest, recover, eat, sleep, come back and do it again. And, they got me back to a spot where I was able to, continue on with the national team and get named to the centralization roster in 2014, and gave me the best possible chance to put myself in a position to make that team. And unfortunately, last possible cut. So I went through the whole year, survived all the cuts, and then was the last cut before they named the team for Sochi, which, hands down, one of the most, devastating things for me as an athlete. And it was during actually that very last game, right before I got released. And it was just this like crazy game. I think we were in North Dakota playing against the Americans. And I remember I was going to take a shot and somebody jammed my stick, my wrist. It was just like compression, rotation, a lot of things going on. I'm like, I did something, but it was the last game. I'm like, got to make an impression. So, kept playing through it. And then actually that game ended with a fight too. My first and only fight ever, my last national team game. So I guess there's that injury and a fight in the last game.
Yeah.
But then,
definitely.
so, after that, they made the final cuts pretty soon after that. And I went through kind of a period of trying to figure things out, whether I wanted to keep playing or not. And, I decided I thought I wanted to keep playing. So I went to see James for my wrist. And initially, we were trying to figure it out. We thought it was a TFCC. Got some imaging done. And, we had some discussion about, surgery, bracing it, things like that. Ended up leaning more so on, a lot of therapy. And then I had it in a brace for, a good month or two, and was able to kind of get it back to fully functioning. And then decided kind of that fall that I didn't really think that I was passionate about hockey as much as I needed to be anymore. And I was ready to kind of move on. And that's when I began my master's at Brock. And that's kind of how I found my way to Brock, I guess.
Yeah. And
I cover it.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of it's just like refreshing for me to go back over those things, but more than our interaction is there's a lot of great lessons in that for athletic therapists, for practitioners on the call, for people picking this up, in that, now you're a practitioner, and we'll definitely get to that part. But you talk about it sort of being piecemealed and things happening like over here and over there and over there. And that's a really interesting take that sometimes we don't take into consideration when we're treating somebody, right? You're getting information as an athlete from all different sources. And to sort of centralize that information in your brain and know what's good information, what's not so good information. You're probably getting contradictory information based off of what some person reads as the MRI report, and that means this, and then somebody else says, okay, let's do it a different way. So just keeping that in mind, and then further to that, just gaining an understanding of your expectations as an athlete, but then reaching out or having the availability to reach out. For us, it was really nice because I could go down and speak with Adam, who was already affiliated with you. But in a situation like that, for practitioners out there that may not have that direct link, it's always, always, always valuable to ask the athlete if it's okay to reach out and call, that organization, call the coach, call the strength people, call the trainers, the therapists that are with that team, just to get a little bit more background and make sure that the language and the care is on par. So some really good stuff in there. And then obviously some huge experience to play for the greatest country in hockey and the best hockey team at the highest level possible. Unbelievable the amount of work and effort that goes into it on your end, and then that transition sort of as you left, as you were in 2014. I think we were still in discussions, and you were kind of wrapping up. All right, I'm not quite as passionate about it. And you talk about passion, and I want to hunker down on that because that's a big one for you and me, definitely. But I think we also had discussions maybe in like 2012, 2013. You were starting to like dangle the carrot of S&C, and like, you know, you were thinking about this kind of stuff, and I think we had the conversation of we're going to work together at some point in the future. I remember distinctly having that.
Yeah, I'm sure we probably had a full business plan built out.
Yeah, and so now I've had the opportunity to come full circle, and I'm interning underneath you with Brock and Steve and Dave down at Brock with the sports performance team, and so that's a whole nother thing. Like we were learning together. You learned a little bit from me therapeutically, and now we're on the other side, and I'm learning from you. And what a cool kind of, I just kind of put that together in the last couple of days leading up to this. Like it's been such a cool relationship, kind of just like give and take and give and take, and just like supporting each other kind of the whole way through, which is really nice. That's happened in such a sort of a natural way and step away, and still always kind of knowing that you're there and coming back around. So it's been really cool from that end, just for context for people as well on that side. But yeah, you transitioned to your master's. Your master's was in starting to move towards S&C, right? Tell us a little bit maybe about master's, and then your transition all the way into Brock, and then let's get going with that.
Sure, definitely. And so when I started my master's, that was kind of still when I was still thinking that I might play a little bit, and master's would allow me to kind of a little bit of flexibility to keep playing. And then it was kind of within the first couple months of the master's that you know, I made the decision to kind of go full in of not playing. Mm-hmm. And you know, if I kind of backtrack way back in high school and university, like S&C was not on the radar. Therapy was on the radar, and med school was on the radar. And in high school, I interned at a physio clinic, and I'm sure I did it for a couple months. And to be honest, I hated it. I was bored to tears, putting ice on knees and things like that. And I'm like, don't think I can do this. And you know, medicine was always something of interest as well. So when I was in university, I wasn't in kinesiology, anything like that. I was in just straight bio, and I wrote my MCATs in when would that have been, like my junior year. And then once I got out of university at Mercer's, that's kind of when I started to say medicine might not be my thing. Like I like high performance sport, but still very much kind of thinking therapy along those lines, you know, along with strength and conditioning. And then when I began my master's, kind of a couple things happened that really, you know, pushed it toward S&C. First, I started teaching as part of my master's, as part of a TA. And as part of my research project, I started training the hockey teams. And, you know, with teaching, you know, that was something that I'd never done before. And my kind of only experience with coaching was, you know, helping out at, you know, kids' hockey camps, where it's less coaching and more babysitting, and I hated it. And I'm like, no way I could be a coach. And then I realized, you know, I started coaching as part of my master's study. You know, coaching is just teaching. And I realized that I really enjoyed both of those pieces. And during that time at Brock, I had already met Steve Lidstone, which I know he's been on your Let's Chat a couple months ago, I think. And, you know, he's an amazing human being. And I'd met him through Hockey Canada, you know, when I was still an athlete. But when I was down at Brock and had decided, you know, I wasn't playing anymore, I still had some lingering groin and stuff and issues that, you know, we had very much managed, but I couldn't come up and drive to York every day and come see you to continue to get them treated. So I started to go see Steve and an osteo, Matt Jansen, and they went through the whole kind of reconditioning process with me of, you know, they would screen me, you know, they would find this, and this, you know, Matt would treat me for, you know, 40, 45 minutes. And then we would do the exercises, you know, some of the reconditioning SFMA based type exercises right after, you know, retrain some of those functional movement patterns. And, you know, the changes that I saw were incredible. And that actually got me very interested in osteo. And, Steve had colleagues, and this is kind of Steve's style, himself, who were kind of S&C osteos, where they would kind of do that type of process where, you would take this athlete who's probably at their, on their wits end of they've tried everything and nothing has worked. And then, they're fortunate to find, some people who are able to put, like we talked about, put the pieces together and look holistically and combine the therapy and the training piece of it. And I'm like, I could see myself doing this, where I'm able to kind of blend the strength and conditioning and the therapy. And during my second year of my master's, I started osteo as well, which I don't recommend doing both your master's and osteo at the same time.
Yeah, big undertaking.
Yeah, I'm not one to think things through fully, I guess, sometimes. So that was a busy couple years. So I did osteo for 2 years, and then I had finished up my master's during that time. And then I also did a strength and conditioning internship with Steve at Mac in a summer during that time. So I was really getting like all of these pieces. I was getting like academic piece from the master's. I was getting a therapy piece from osteo, and I was getting a strength and conditioning piece, from my internship with Steve. And then kind of from training within my thesis study as well. So I was getting all these pieces, and it was kind of during my second year of osteo, where I started to really feel, that I was a lot more passionate about the S&C side of things. And, I was going through and, studying for osteo and trying to be a good strength and conditioning coach at the same time. I realized that, for sure I could get through, the next 3 years and get my osteo degree and do this kind of reconditioning piece. But I'm like, at the end of the day, I felt like I was being very average at both. I felt like I was being an average strength and conditioning coach and an average therapist. And, my personality is like, I never want to be average at anything. And, to be a really, really good therapist, like, you need to be a therapist, and like, you need to be able to dedicate so much time to your manual skills and all of those pieces. And same thing with a strength and conditioning coach. If you want to be, one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in the world, I think you have to be pretty much dedicated almost full time to that craft. And I felt like I was, if I was going to keep going along this path, I was going to be average at both. And that wasn't okay with me. And I just found I was a lot more passionate, on the strength and conditioning side of things, which I didn't think I would be, to be completely honest. But I found that, well, I already know with my background as an athlete, like, I love being in the gym. I love being with teams. I love being with athletes. I love being on the floor. One of my favorite parts of my job is, just almost like the movement aspect of it, and the energy, and I'm demoing and I'm in there, and I'm there's a lot going on, and it's fun, and
Absolutely.
I love that piece of it. And that's kind of my style of coaching. And that's kind of at the end of my second year of osteo, I decided strength and conditioning is where I want to be. And it was a, I would say, tough decision leading up to it, just because the thought of stopping something that I started, that's not one that I take easily.
Yep.
It's not something that I do very often. So that was the biggest thing, I think, holding me back from making the decision. But to be honest, since I've made that decision, I haven't thought twice about it. Like, one of the best decisions I've made, and I'm completely happy about it. And, I don't regret those 2 years at all, because those have added so many pieces of knowledge and skills to, my skill set that probably, a lot of strength and conditioning coaches might not have.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, after I decided, I'd take osteo kind of off the plate. I did another year of just, being able to dump myself fully into strength and conditioning, and it was awesome. And then after that, I decided that, PhD was something that I wanted to pursue. And I started my PhD because I've always, I love school. I love formal education. Not everyone does. Not everyone, finds that learning style that they do well with. I do. I like it.
Yep.
And I knew kind of, down the road, PhD was always something that, I probably wanted to do. And, at Brock, I had the opportunity to do it under Dr. Brian Roy. So I've kind of just finished up my first year of that, and same thing, just, I'm loving it and enjoying that process as well.
Yeah, so it's such huge info, and you've developed like your own style, your own learning methods, you've really assessed yourself this entire time and kind of followed your heart, followed your passion. And so for some of the younger listeners, some of the younger viewers live and on the archive sessions, just coming out of school, or people who are in a bit of a transition between a job or looking for something new or trying something new, finding what works, it really does involve eliminating what doesn't work. Like that's a big part of it, right? And just because you starting and stopping is hard, definitely. And not completing a task with your mentality and what you've accomplished in your sporting career and then in your academic career and all these things is definitely difficult. But at the same time, the growth factor is housed, right? Like it's housed in that process. It's not housed in the paper at the end of it. It's housed in like how you're getting to your decisions and how you're chasing what you want, or finding what you want. I shouldn't say chasing. And then sort of like, yeah, following your heart, following your passion, and it's serving you well. Like we can feel it in I'm going to say the room, but like in this conversation, we feel the energy when you start talking about being active and being on the floor and sort of just like moving. And these are the things that that really make you go, and those are the things that really benefit your athletes as well. Anybody who works with you, I've spoken to a couple of the athletes that you work with, and definitely some of your colleagues and these kinds of things. And it's a really awesome environment that you guys have created at Brock too, and you're a massive part of that. So I want to talk about that. But as I was prepping for this, not in preparation for this conversation, but because I read on a fairly regular basis, although slowly and and often in various different realms, I was reading something. It was I think it was either yesterday or the day before, and I took a picture of it, and I'm just going to read it because I think it and then let's maybe just talk off of this piece in terms of Brock and in terms of how you see this field. Let's say AT, because I'm an athletic therapist, and we'll say like CSCS as well, because I house that into my realm. But definitely I feel like that integration is massive. And then other practitioners as well. Certainly in an integrated model, we need to be open to all of this. But anyway, in discussing sort of how to help groups function more effectively. The problem here is that as humans, we have an authority bias that's incredibly strong and unconscious. If a superior tells you to do something, we tend to follow it, even when it's wrong. Having one person tell other people what to do is not a reliable way to make good decisions. So how do you create conditions where that doesn't happen, where you develop a hive mind? How do you develop ways to challenge each other, ask the right questions, and never defer to authority? We're trying to create leaders among leaders. And you just can't tell people to do that. You have to create the conditions where they start to do it. And I think like just in sitting in on your internship opportunity with Brock and having some experience and opportunities in my career already coming into that, I've really been able to hunker down. I'm not so good at keeping up on the assignments, but like hunker down with the material and the information, and really kind of filter how you guys are delivering information to your interns specifically, and then how that's filtering into the athletes. So in terms of how you guys discuss, let's say programming, and let's say how you're going to, so how you discuss programming, and or like how the gym flow is going to happen, or what's going to happen where, and who's going to do what. How does that work at Brock, and what's effective communication, and what does sort of the opposite look like or feel like, if you've had any experience with that?
Sure. And, everything that we do at Brock and our whole, culture and environment starts with Steve. And, he's our leader. But, Steve is one of the most tremendous leaders that I could ever ask for, where, since the beginning, it's been, collaboration, and he's given me the ability to really own my role. And, one of the biggest things that Steve has taught me, since when I was doing the internship at Mac to, since starting to work under him directly at Brock, is, this idea of principles, and just, understanding your principles and letting them guide your decisions. And, with our team at Brock, our sports performance team, Steve, myself, Dave McDowell, who's an incredible coach, Taylor Thiessen as well, we all share the same principles. And, something that I'm very thankful for, that Steve, allows us to do, is from a programming standpoint, never once, have I ever felt micromanaged or told to do, this and this, anything like that. And, we share the same principles, and our, across the four of us, our programs might look a little bit different, but we all have specific reasons why we're doing things, and they're all very much guided by the same principles, where we don't need to agree on every little piece, all the little nitty-gritty things. And that's kind of where we have some fun discussions as well. And it allows for growth, I think, for all of us.
Yeah.
But it's really those principles that guide, a lot of the programming aspect. And then, how we filter down to our student interns. We're very fortunate at Brock. We've got, between 40 and 50 student interns, which is like an army. And whenever I tell other strength and conditioning coaches that, like, their jaws just drop, they can't believe it. And again, like, just so incredibly grateful for Steve, because, that's all him. He's built, our entire sport performance and our entire, internship. And it allows us to do so much more, having that support from our student interns. And, it's all about student experience as well. And, I mentioned it earlier, something that I really love to do is to teach. And the internship is an outlet for that. And we run a curriculum for our interns. So, you're part of our summer internship right now, which is kind of, more so open to students from other universities, or, just, therapists or strength and conditioning coaches who are post-grad and just want to continue to learn. But our, during the school year, our in-year internship, we have a structured curriculum. We have it broken into levels. First year, we call it rookie, junior, senior. And we're all kind of delivering content based on the levels, and we all, agree on the content. And, for this level, these are the things that we're focusing on, this, and this. And we all kind of collaborate to make sure that the principles that we're passing on to our students are very sound and very consistent across. And it's funny because we hear this from our interns that, sometimes for a lot of it, I'll have interns and they'll work under me for most of it, but then they'll go help Dave, and they'll see Dave doing things slightly differently. And it's awesome for them, because they're like, well, why is Dave doing it this way? And, well, I say, well, ask him. I bet he has an awesome reason. And I bet, it follows the exact same principles that we're all following, but we're just doing, similar things in different ways. And I think that's, an awesome part of our staff within Brock is, we've all got slightly different ways to do things, different personalities, different strengths, and we all kind of, add something to our program.
Yeah, it certainly has an integrative feel, an inclusive feel, and no doubt that the results of the majority of Brock's teams of late are very much due to the fact that they're feeding off of not just good quality information and programming, but the energy of that place must be fantastic. And when you have 40 interns and people drop their jaws and say, like, oh my gosh, well, how did you do that? It's pretty simple to see how you get 40 to 50 people who want to work with in a high quality environment with high quality professionals like you guys. So kudos to you, and I'll thank you on your athletes' behalf, and definitely for all the interns and us summer interns as well. It's an amazing experience to have, and as an alumni to Brock as well, it's come so far. And not that it was ever bad when I was there, but it's grown and it's shifted and it's adapted, and it's become, I'd venture to say, like the piece de resistance of the OUA, if not the U Sport. That's as close to French as I get. But
that's impressive. That I wouldn't make that attempt. So good on you, man.
Yeah, I'll give that a go. But very much other people and other places that could imitate it and learn a lot too. So anybody who's on the call or picking this up in the future on the archive, Steve and Steve heads everything up. Vicki does a few teams there, and certainly as a lead performance coach. Dave and Taylor, very accessible as well. Vic, I won't put words in your mouth, but if there are questions or you want to go down and check it out when we're sort of post-COVID and back allowing people in spaces and doing things, I know Steve mentioned it when he was on, and just, a nice, polite, quick email that says, hey, I'd love to pick your brain for 5 or 10 minutes in the future goes a long way too. So lots to learn continually, and you guys are doing a great job down there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we, our teams, we did have a really great year, and it's been, fun to see some of the development of of the athletes, and more so not just the physical development, but seeing them develop as people too. And now that our program has been in place for 4 years, for the first time, like we've had someone go through all 4 years of the program, and now both as athletes and as our student staff, which is really neat to see the growth of both kind of just the athlete and then the student staff as well. We've got some going on to do their masters. One just messaged me a couple weeks ago. She just got into UBC to do her masters there. I was very excited about that, and pursuing further education in coaching and strength and conditioning, kinesiology. And it's again, it's all Steve's doing, but we just try to do the best job that we can, and make an impact on the athletes, make an impact on our students, so that when they leave Brock, they're better for crossing our paths.
Yeah, great stuff, and very humble of you to keep deferring to Steve, but I'm going to venture to say that Steve is very grateful to have you on board as well, to sort of, and I mean challenge in the most positive sense, to challenge him and to keep him on his toes and active and constantly ready to evolve. And that buzzword these days is like learning how to pivot, and just pivoting as things move, and pivoting as COVID changes or things change in terms of training. But you stick to those principles that you guys have, and the nitty gritty or the finer details can be moved around outside and around, as long as they're in conjunction with the principles. But maybe let's get into a little bit of the S&C role with different sports. So we talk about we get into hockey, and does men's and women do the men and women do the programs vary a little bit? Are they doing the same movements in the gym? I've had this discussion. I've been involved in your training and talked long hours with Adam about what goes into it and these things in the past. But for people who aren't familiar, how does that look, the male female thing? And then maybe let's specific to hockey, and then hockey let's compare to soccer, and just look at surface and what considerations go into programming or what you're doing with those athletes.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question, because I think there are differences, and because you've worked in youth sports, you would kind of understand the difference of the athletes coming into the university setting, based on those different categories. And we'll start kind of men's, women's hockey. So with our men's players, they come into a university setting, a youth sports setting, first of all, much older than
right.
the women's hockey players. Most of them are coming in after playing major junior hockey, so OHL, WHL, and they're they've earned their kind of university money, and they're coming to get their education and continue to play hockey. And it's a mix as far as their level of wanting to train to continue to get better. For a lot of them, they're there, they still love hockey and they want to play hockey, but the training side of it, they'll train, they know it's relatively important. But the accountability, might not, be as strong.
There was always a high training level for the beer Olympics. I remember it with, I don't know what university that was, but the men's hockey team was, there was always a good beer Olympics that they hosted. Anyway.
Yeah. That wouldn't surprise me. So, but it's a range, but we do, we have a handful too, on the team who, come and, they want to play pro after. And in the last 2 years, we've had 2 goalies sign pro contracts. And, we had a new coach come in a couple of years ago, Marty Williamson, who's, worked in major junior for a long time. He's an awesome coach. And, we're really, with our men's team, we're trying to build a development type model where, hey, you guys, this isn't the end point. It doesn't have to be. If you continue to put work in, there's no reason why you can't keep playing pro hockey after this. And whether that's, in North America, whether that's overseas, on the men's side, you guys have opportunities that women don't have to continue to play after university. So, do it, like play hockey for as long as you can. And, we're starting to see that with our program. We're getting guys coming in who are hungrier and who want to keep playing and training and stuff like that. And, that makes it fun for me because, I can, give them more stuff because they're going to do it. And I can, design the program in that way. But, as far as the players coming in, like they have a pretty high training age already. Not only are they older, but, most of them have done structured strength and conditioning for several years already before they come to me. On our
Right.
women's side of it, very different world. Most of them are coming in right after high school. Maybe some of them took an extra year, but for the most part, it's right out of grade 12. Hit or miss whether they've done any type of structured strength and conditioning training. So very low training age for my women's hockey players. So for me, it's kind of like a little bit of a blank slate where I can start from the bottom and really kind of build them up, which is awesome for me. And our head coach, Margot Page, she's awesome and has great structure to her program and great buy-in from the athletes, where when I'm giving them summer programming, they're doing it. They're not missing sessions during the year unless of course they're sick or have an exam or things like that.
Right.
So I can kind of really see my programs and recommendations kind of come to life with a team like that, because they are so kind of bought in, which is for me it's a lot of fun, because I can kind of really lean into it and dig my teeth into it. So that's again quite a difference between our men's side and our women's side. Both very different coming in as far as training age, as far as mentality, as far as goals, things like that. And then on the other side of that, soccer, again, kind of a whole different beast. And with our soccer programs, it's very much, I would say, student athlete. Soccer is a fall sport. So their season is essentially done by hopefully November if we made it to playoffs. But sometimes, it could be as early as October. But those athletes coming in, most of them have zero, like strength and conditioning. They're very much training age zero. They played a heck a lot of soccer though. But as far as the training side of things, we're starting them from ground zero, where, women's hockey, are we starting them from ground zero? Kind of, most of them are still kind of pretty athletic and they probably have trained a little bit, just not consistently, but they've been exposed to being in a gym where, I have female soccer players who have like never been in a gym. So they're,
Right.
I guess, ground zero minus zero.
Yeah.
But again, it's fun because I can build them up and take our time doing it. And with soccer, because it is a fall sport, even more awesome because that means the bulk of the year is off season. So we can, really dig our teeth into the training side of it from November to April, when I'm there with them, giving them their, with them for their sessions 3 times a week for their off season. And that's, a huge opportunity for development for those teams, because we can progress, while being in the gym with our staff and getting coached day to day. We see nice, improvements with those guys because their off season falls during the school year.
Yeah, it's amazing insight to hear, sort of like from the S&C side, and to hear from you, obviously, from being such a high level athlete and now such a high level coach with so many different areas, different teams, different demographics, and just the considerations that you give in delivering that answer. Like you're considering where athletes are coming from, where they're coming in from, what they've done previously. Like all of these things are crucial to understanding. That's applicable to therapy realms. That's applicable to teachers teaching students. You need to have an understanding of the history in order to deliver the present, right? And sort of to, if we're going to say predict, but like direct towards the future. Like understanding the history is massive. And then just going back to sort of programming and the ownership that I don't want to say that you're given, that you've earned the ownership of the role that you have at Brock. And I liken that to sort of an analogy that I use, and that's the therapy or the therapist athlete ratio. And I always talk about ratios, and in all of the courses that I'm going to be leading coming up, I always talk about what's your ratio. And if you don't have an understanding of what your ratio is, then develop that. Because once you develop that, you can see if you're truly getting humans better when they walk out the door. And that ratio is this, is like, if an athlete is 100% dependent on me, that's fine for a time being. But if that percentage doesn't start to be divided 90-10, 80-20, 60-40. And if that doesn't become 50-50 or beyond, then we haven't really done our job in terms of developing athletes, whether it's recovering from an injury, studying for a test, or strength training, or preparing for whatever's coming in terms of a season. So that's kind of my language, but it's also that ownership, right? It's shifting ownership and shifting accountability from practitioner dependence to athlete independence. And the better off athletes are at being independent, the better off we are as practitioners, because then we've developed the trust, the communication, and we know that we're making an impact.
Yeah, I love that point, and that's something that I tell, and to be honest, this message is very often directed toward our female athletes, where I tell them, when you leave Brock, I want you to be able to walk into a gym with confidence and know what you're doing, and feel good about it, and building some of those confidence pieces in our female athletes, and seeing that grow is one of my favorite parts of the job. And then on the other side of that too, sometimes Dave, Steve, Taylor, and I, we run little experiments during exam periods. We don't run team sessions. We run all open hours, and where we'll just have a coach supervising, and coaches from, or athletes from kind of any team can come in, and they've got their workout on their team builder.
Right.
They just have to kind of follow it, and the coaches are there to kind of help them as needed. And we'll kind of sit back during open hours, and we'll just observe and try to see, like, who knows how to read their program, who knows what a knee hug to a forward lunge is. And it's very interesting to see. And you see some athletes, they wind it up going through step by step, bang bang bang, and they're totally fine. You're like, yep, that athlete gets it, they know what they're doing. And then the other athletes, like, they're looking at it, they're swimming, they're kind of like trying to make eye contact with you, and you're like, they don't quite have it yet, so let's go help them. But it's we want that from our athletes to, by the end of it, they know, if I ask them, they could probably make a little workout for themselves, or a little program for themselves. And that tells us that we've done that kind of teaching piece of it too.
Yeah, and it's I guess exam time outside of the lecture halls too. They don't really know it, but it's a nice little exam to see where they're at, study them a little bit, but also kind of evaluate how, exactly, the codependencies, or like where they're struggling, or is the language okay? Is the team builder app not functional, or do they not recall certain things? It's great. I think it's amazing, and you guys do such a good job of one of the foundational pieces in anybody who works with other human beings that some people tend to leave out. And that's that you have your intervention, let's call it an intervention, your program, your microcycle, your mesocycle, whatever it might be. Your intervention is the movement piece. But you guys do such a great job with the test and then the retest, the same test you're performing after the intervention, to see where the changes are happening, or if the changes are happening. And if not, again, it comes back around to, this is where the process needs to shift a little bit, right? So maybe it's the program, or maybe it's the test you're doing, but either way, it provides you with an opportunity to adapt and pivot, so to speak. You're never going to do anything that's going to hinder an athlete, but it may not accelerate them to the greatest degree every single time. So I just love how the way that you guys have formatted things. And Steve is obviously a great leader, but knowing you and knowing your mentality and the quality that you take with everything that you do, they're in good hands without a doubt. And then again, another thing you brought up, like so many good points, so rich here, the OUA and moving to pro from the OUA. I think that's becoming a little bit more common in multiple sports now, right? And it's really nice to see that Canada is getting recognized as like a country that can produce athletes. I just go back through the 30 previous sessions of guests who we've had on here, predominantly Canadian practitioners, and there's just such high quality in Canada, but for some reason we divert a lot of the time to the US. I guess there's a little bit more money, and there's a little bit more funding, and a little bit more bright lights on sport in the US. But it's really nice to see. I know there's been a couple guys from Brock sign with the Jays late in the draft and those kinds of things. And I know York had a bunch of guys go play hockey professionally, and it's really nice to see. And you just highlight all that stuff. And again, I think it's definitely because they are getting continued support in the OUA too, which is great, to have athletes be able to be home in Canada and still have a shot to continue on. And so for all the practitioners out there and people who are looking for, an opportunity to impact athletes at the highest level, it's still right here. It's definitely housed here in Ontario and in Canada for sure. So yeah, some really great stuff. And you also talk about, a development program with hockey and making it a development program within within Brock strength and conditioning, I guess, overall. The Raptors do a nice job of that, right? As an NBA team, I never hear I'm going to mess his name, but Mr. Ujiri talk about anything other than the Raptors as a program. He never says our team. Yeah. He never says anything. It's a program. And so everybody that they're looking at from scouting all the way up is serviceable, right? Like making them serviceable to the highest level possible for them. So that's really, really great stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, you brought up basketball, men's basketball is another program that, Steve does strength and conditioning for men's basketball. But the coaches and the entire men's basketball program has that same mentality of developing, those players to go play pro. And we've had a couple, and, with the Canadian pro leagues popping up, in multiple sports, basketball, soccer too. We want the OUA and the U Sports to be a feeder league, a feeder for pro. And I think we're starting to see that more and more, and hopefully that continues.
Yeah. And then just to shift gears even further, like down at Brock, Canada, like the summer games are coming next year, right? We hope. And there's a lot of, we hope the summer comes, but we also hope that, things are allowing for that to happen. But there's huge developments there, right? I haven't been to the campus in a while, but I keep seeing the posts of the center. How is that going to impact you guys and what you're doing there? You're gaining more space, obviously. How does that look?
Yeah, we're, obviously still kind of now some TBD, I guess,
right.
With everything kind of going on. But, as far as we know, we're still hosting the summer 2021 games in Niagara next summer.
Yep.
And, Brock is very much going to be a part of hosting those games. And we're very fortunate that we're getting some new infrastructure and facilities on our campus. And, I guess within this whole kind of COVID scenario, we're always searching for positives. And I think, not having people around campus where they've had to divert and things like that has probably allowed them to maybe get things done a little bit more efficiently and smoothly. Yeah. But we've got some buildings going up. They're building a track center. They're building a 2-pad rink. Right now our varsity hockey teams play off campus at a community rink. In a few years, I don't know if the actual kind of ice surfaces will be ready for the winter of 2021. But moving forward after that, our hockey teams will be able to play on campus. They're trying to build a satellite sports center out of there, paired with the CSIO. They're trying to make it the home of Wrestling Canada, they're a decentralized program. We've got a bit of a Wrestling Canada hub at Brock. But they don't have kind of like an official training center, so they're looking at that possibility. And we're excited to kind of see how that develops and how that kind of impacts us as far as space and training and things like that.
Yeah, awesome. I think it'll be another feather for the cap, so to speak. It'll just enhance things even further, hopefully provide you guys a little bit more space, maybe 60 more interns, and who knows, and maybe some other opportunities down the line. I think it's pairing up really nicely. So if anything, I just typed it over here in the chat box, but if anybody has anything for Vicki that you want to ask specific to sports, specific to training, her life, her role, her passions, or otherwise, please feel free to ask. Type it in the chat box or unmute and fire away. Just in the interim here, Vic, not to downplay your time at all, but coming up next week, August 2nd, will be the recently named captain of Velour FC in the CPL, Dylan Carrero, will be on as our guest for session 32. Session 33 will be August 9th, and that'll be Chris Robertson, who is the lead strength and conditioning coach with Rugby Canada and works out of CSIO here in Scarborough in Toronto. So those will be the next two guests. So we'll just tee that up up while we're waiting for some questions to come in. But really appreciate your time, Vic. And coming around to your PhD, what is it you're looking at specifically now? I just think it's so amazing that, I don't know, we go back and we look at sort of like where strength and conditioning was even, I don't know, 12 years ago, and this is a random number in my head, and then seeing where it's at now and how much, what a progressive natured role S&C is, constantly thinking ahead, constantly developing things, constantly taking in all of the elements and pivoting, for lack of a better term, pivoting, being able to move with things and making it happen. So where's your PhD? I know you're a year in, but where is it? Where do you hope to take it?
Sure. One of my main goals out of my PhD, so I'm looking, specifically at skating speed and trying to get a more quantified understanding of some of these physical underpinnings of what makes a player fast on the ice. Awesome. And we know, when we watch a player skate fast, there's a lot of things that go into that. And, there's the physical piece, there's the technical piece. Skating is very much a skill. There's equipment piece. They're wearing skates. How the skate is structured certainly has an impact on how fast that player is going to go. And, part of what I'm trying to figure out is, well, how much of the player speed can we attribute to the physical side of things? Because, those are, within my control that I can, make an impact on. And the first part of that is figuring out some of these kind of general physical pieces that we can tease out from things like sprinting and getting the athletes, acceleration ability off the ice, max velocity ability off the ice, their jump profile off the ice. We're very fortunate at Brock to have a set of force plates now, which allows us to kind of very much dig into how athletes are producing their force. Like how do these pieces contribute to a player's ability to skate fast? Yeah. And then, once we've identified what some of these important pieces are for skating speed, well, we can't say that just because they relate that improving it will help this athlete skate faster. Yeah. But if we do a study where we improve these pieces and then we test again whether they skate faster, then maybe we can have that kind of conversation of training this off the ice transfers to that. Without a training type study, it's more of a hypothesis, I guess. But that's kind of where it's leading. And with hockey, we all know how much speed is coveted.
Yeah.
And measuring on ice speed was something that I started to do right away when I started working with the hockey teams. And skating fast in a straight line is just one small piece of the puzzle of what might make a hockey player good. But it's kind of the part that I'm trying to tease out and get a better understanding of.
Yeah, awesome. It sounds like an amazing project, and we'll keep an eye on where that's going. And whatever you come up with, I'm sure will only enhance Hockey Canada's ability to win gold medals in the future as well. So no pressure, but that's the plan for sure, 100%. And then you talk about some other things, equipment and some of these things, and strength and stride length and some of the the biomechanical factors that go into it. One area that I've really kind of hunkered down into of late, just like reading and studying and really thinking a little bit outside the box on is how much we don't know, right? Like how much of a sporting environment, all the extraneous variables, so the constantly changing environment, like all these things, they're almost impossible to account for, right? Other players, crowd noise, what's going on between somebody's ears, where their focus is, where their eyes are. Yeah, all these things. So like that extraneous kind of the variability in the environment that athletes are actually in doesn't really allow us to know as much as we think we know. So then we do our bit to exactly what you're doing with your PhD, chunk it down a little bit, sink your teeth into a specific area, and then, tease out some really good quality information. Sounds amazing. And I'm sure all the athletes that are working with you are waiting on those results too, and all the future ones. And a good question just came in actually with future in mind here. What are the areas you find most underdeveloped in the female hockey players you work with? Is there any piece of their training that you think amateur players should work on to help them be successful in the OUA?
Certainly with our female players, especially the ones kind of coming into the U sport, they lack a lot of just kind of basic strength. And low strength is one of the biggest low hanging fruit that you can build on an athlete. And it checks so many boxes that we care about as strength and conditioning coaches and as therapists. Strength It helps with speed, it helps with power. It builds resiliency across tissues. You're less likely to get fatigued, and there's been studies that show stronger athletes are less likely to get injured.
Mm-hmm.
So strength is really something that we do try to do a really good job of building in our female players as soon as they come in. And with strength, it's just consistency, putting in good work consistently, and you see that kind of improvement that we want to see. And even though hockey is a full year sport, so most of their time with me, from the time they get there at in September to April, most of that is during the season. And traditionally during the season, a lot of times you get in the mentality of just kind of maintaining strength and things like that. But with our young female athletes, female hockey players, because their training age is so low, just basic consistent strength work through the in season, when they still have huge amounts of on ice volume, we see them get stronger and faster, even though they've got such high on ice volume. So my answer to that would certainly be strength. Get them strong.
Yeah, and I think that's an unbiased view. And even if it is biased, it's certainly founded in a whole lot of science, and then a whole lot of experience, both as an athlete and living it, and as a coach now, teaching, preaching, and also living it that way as well. And I think sometimes what we constantly search for with athletes is gets lost in sort of some of the things that aren't quite as sexy, for lack of a better term, is like being really, I don't know who said it, but I love it, is like being savage at the basics. And if you can do that, you're just going to be able to be a whole lot better at the end of the day. So all the frills and like being able to, my go-to is like, the handstand with no shirt on and like doing the things. Like if you can do all those things, it's nice, but like owning that foundational component, you're always going to be okay if you can really own the basics. And you can rebut that if you like, or just agree and expand, however you see fit with that one.
Yes, that I absolutely love that line. I first heard it from Jordan Foley.
Mm-hmm.
He came a couple years ago and spoke to our interns, and he had it on his slide, Savage at the basics. And then the next day I wrote it like on our whiteboard at Brock, and I've been parroting it ever since. I think it's a great line, and it's so true. When you see the best of the best, the ones on TV, you don't see kind of them doing the basics, but I can guarantee they are absolutely savages at those basics, and they do the basics extremely well, and they've been doing them for a long time and consistently. And things like basic strength, things like moving well, which doesn't make a lot of those Instagram posts, but is so important, like basic lumbopelvic function, things like that. No one's throwing up glute bridges on the old Instagram, but man, probably pretty important.
Right. Really, really crucial. And I'm smiling basically from ear to ear because I'm hosting this online course coming up in August. This isn't a plug, but like one of my main lines is like, if you want to make athletes better, or you want to be a good athlete, the bottom line for me always is just be a good mover. That's it. That's all it is. That's all you have to do. And then the hard part is figuring out what exactly does that mean. But as a practitioner, you figure out what that means for you and with your clientele and with your athlete base. What does that mean? And work backwards from being a good mover. What does this athlete need? What does this cohort demographic need in order to be savage at the basics, in order to be solid foundationally, so that they can be stronger, better, faster, have more power, depending on which variables you're tinkering with at the time, either in your microcycle or your treatment session or your stage of rehab. It's all very much usable information across credentials, across professions working in the performance realm. So I love it. That's amazing. That's great stuff. And I'm glad that you brought it up, because I feel like that one slide is just going to kick ass because you said it too. So
on movement, the best therapist that I've worked with, both as an athlete, as a coach, had that as one of their biggest principles as well, because it is truly one of the foundations.
Yeah, very cool. Another good question with regard to female hockey players. Do you train grip strength differently than male hockey players, because females tend not to be as strong with grip strength, which helps them in shooting and general lifting and carrying of loads?
No, not specifically. Like we don't train grip strength, differently for our female athletes. We find things like, chin ups, trap bar deadlifts, farmer's walks, things like that are gonna, improve the grip strength, in a fine manner. As far as grip strength being important for stick handling and shooting, I would say to be determined. I think overall, upper body and lower body strength, good torso strength is probably going to have more transfer, to some of those pieces than grip strength on its own. But something like chin ups, a lot of female athletes, come into the university setting, can't do a chin up. And as they progress and as they get overall stronger, and they start to be able to add a chin up or two, we see major changes to how they perform on the ice, just because a chin up is a pretty good indicator of how strong you are overall.
Yeah, they just became a good mover once they can nail that one. Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. And I think that's a great answer. And sometimes we get a little hunkered down into some of the finer details, and grip strength comes from any number of different things. Everything you do in a gym essentially is enhancing grip strength, right? By the time you're grabbing a bar, pushing something or pulling something, we should be working some of the intrinsics of the hand and the wrist and the kinetic chain from fingertip to shoulder to torso to midline to opposite hip to the same toe with the toe turned, whatever it might be. We're kind of constantly, hopefully, training that as well. But a good question, a couple of really good questions that came in with regards to female athletes. And I listened to a really interesting podcast. I don't know, it was so long ago, I can't even remember who was on it, but they were talking about hormonal differences and really like what does training look like with the menstruation cycle, and like how does that play, and is that being taken into consideration? And we don't need to get into it now, but I just think that looking at that dynamic when you're training female athletes and really taking into account what's going on there that is different than males has to be a consideration with training as well. And I think they were talking actually about just the move from like pre-adolescence into adolescence. Like that's a big move right there, and sort of how we're training or talking to athletes and whether or not that's being given a consideration. So I don't know if you do anything with that, or you want to speak to it at all.
I guess speak to maybe a little bit, just a tidbit that I actually picked up during this COVID period. Also listening to a podcast, probably a different one though. It was by Dr. Keith Barr, who does a lot of research in tendons, and he was talking about the incidence of muscle strains and ACL tears in kind of males versus females.
Yeah.
And what you tend to see is female athletes are more likely to get ACL tears, male athletes are more likely to get muscle strains. And he said part of that is likely due to the hormonal environment and the differences where females, they have more estrogen. And what estrogen does is through some of its biomechanical or biochemical mechanisms, it reduces the amount of stiffness in the tissues, which can be preventative for muscle strains because the muscles are a little bit less stiff and a little bit more pliable, but might add a little bit of laxity during certain periods of the menstrual cycle to
Right.
some of the ligaments, which as your passive stabilizers, that's not really optimal. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting anecdote that is kind of a hormonal reason for some of the things that we see from an injury standpoint.
Yeah, super cool. And I would venture to say that if you're working with athletes, knowing who they are and what they're going through is massive as well. So even if that's what they're studying or when their exams are and these kinds of things, and I know you guys program as well, not to shift completely, but you guys program as well around like exam time and things differ and around season time, and that all comes from understanding and being sort of, I guess, empathetic, but more so like looking at the holistic approach to training and when it's going to be most impactful and where it's going to really help enhance performance, longevity, these kinds of things throughout the course of a season and beyond, throughout a lifetime, which is, again, sort of where I've shifted my angle towards is very much like how do we transition this so that this sticks and goes beyond the phase in the life of an athlete and into just like life as a whole, and blending sort of like this holistic approach. Again, you guys do a great job programming there. You build in all of the injury prevention, injury deterrence into what you're doing with the athletes. You have a very blended model, integrated model with your PT or your medical doctors, your ATs, and your strength and conditioning people. So it's a really nice a nice layout, and I'm certain that the athletes benefit from it, and the university as a whole in terms of student experience, which I know is massive at Brock, and with the athletics program there is extremely grateful for having you guys and being so open-minded and driven to help on all those different levels. So
yeah, we're trying that. That integrated model is the goal, and it's come a long way, and we're always kind of trying to improve it. I don't think it's kind of where we want it yet, but we're trying to make it as cohesive and integrative as possible, because I think that really is the optimal environment for the athlete to be in.
Yeah, and it takes going back to sort of creating leaders amongst leaders. It goes back to having open communication and setting your ego aside and just leading with good quality dialogue and being open-minded and open enough to not put up walls and actually, break them down and allow the information to flow centrally so that you can come up with the best possible scenario for everybody. So I think it's amazing, and I look forward to continuing to follow you guys in terms of what's going on down there, and potentially, pick your brains into the future as well with some other projects that are coming up. So So I don't know if anybody has anything else, please. It's already past an hour. I don't know how. I thought it was about 8:15 or 8:20, but the time flies when you're having great conversation. And Vic, you and I had talked about sort of the CEU model and going to conferences and going to clinics and really hoping that you're going to get something out of it. But this has been so rich in terms of, your willingness to be open and sort of deliver on, your career and how you've gotten to where you've gotten to, and what really truly matters as both an athlete, as strength and conditioning coach, and then sort of like an all encompassing human being as well. So it's been incredible having you on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, well, I appreciate the opportunity to kind of come talk, and anytime I get to talk with James Gardner for a full hour all at once, it takes me back to our time in the clinic at York. So no, I enjoyed it. I'll throw my email here in the chat, and if anyone on the call wants to reach out, please don't hesitate at all. Happy to talk about anything, help you in any way I can, and just kind of keep the conversation going as much as possible.
Yeah, and that's it. I don't. Yeah, okay, there it is. Yeah, perfect. Vicki Bendus at gmail.com. Because I don't know if that'll go up on the archive. So it's Vicki, Vicki Bendus at gmail.com. And again, Vic, really appreciate your time and efforts being on here. And we didn't even really talk about the Blue Jays, but we won't get into that because this season is off to a very familiar start, starting down in Tampa Bay and having all the struggles.
I would say so.
In the Trop, fans or no fans. I feel like it's the same at the Trop now as it was as if fans were allowed.
That was my first impression as soon as I was watching on opening day, and this feels the exact same.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Really, really good stuff. Again, this has been Let's Chat session 31 with Vicki Bendus as our guest this evening, an athletic therapy roundtable. Vicki, really appreciate you being on. Wish you all the best with the PhD. I'm sure, I'll see you again Tuesday at the latest in the morning, but for all of us, really wanted to thank you for your time. A whole bunch of thank yous coming in here, obviously. It's been great. It's been great catching up. It's been great staying in contact with you. Thank you for the impact you've had in my world, in our life, and beyond for everybody else that's here. So appreciate it, and I'll wish you a good night.
All right, thanks. Night, James. Night, everybody.
All right,
thanks
good night.
For hanging out.
Everybody else, thank you very much for being on here and for checking in. Let's Chat, an athletic therapy roundtable. Our next session again will be August 2nd with Dylan Carrero, the recently named captain of Velour FC of the CPL. I'm going to stop recording as of 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com. CONSULT@firststartherapy.com. On Instagram @firststar.therapy, and our podcast host @letschat.at. This is First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.